Hi everybody, this is Maria Clark and welcome to my studio. Today we're going to make a 3 roses necklace. Let's get started. Check out the description box below for a link to my blog, which has a complete list of tools and materials. But basically we'll need 2 colors of clay, a green and a color for your roses, and basic craft supplies and jewelry making supplies. Use the template to cut out 3 of the green, 3 leaf shapes out of the green. And this is going to form the base of our necklace. You don't have to be perfect as you trace around and cut with a craft knife. We're looking just for a general shape because we're going to do a little bit of extra shaping to these. Once you get these cut out, we're going to go ahead and bevel the edges. Just use your finger to lightly tap down the edge so that it's not a sharp edge, so it has a slight bevel to it. And we'll do that on each one of these pieces. Once we get that done, we'll take our needle tool and we'll score the veins of the leaf and just put as many veins as you'd like in the leaf. And we'll go ahead and use that needle tool to just poke a few dots into the leaf, and that's just to give it texture. We're going to go ahead and antique this a little bit later on, so we want to have a nice bit of texture on each one of these leaves. You can make these leaves any size you want. If this necklace seems a little bit too big for you, just scale the leaf shape down a little bit. And the roses you can make any size you want. So we'll go ahead and get each of those leaves textured. Once we have the texturing in, I like to put the leaves on a cardstock, a piece of cardstock, just to so it's not sticking to my table and hard to get up. And I'll take one leaf and I'll place that in the center, and you can see that I'm sort of adjusting the curve of the leaf so it looks a little bit more natural. And then I'll put each of the other 2 pieces on to form the 3-leaf base and just do a little bit of shaping to each one of those leaves. Once I have that leaf, the leaf base shaped, I'm going to go ahead and take the rose color for the clay, and you could use any color that you wanted. I just happen to like this particular shade of pink, and we're going to cut out some strips. And with those strips, we're going to make a snake, and that snake is going to taper at one end because we're going to form the roses out of this taper. Just go ahead and this is probably about maybe 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch thick, maybe closer to 1/4 of an inch. And you can see that I'm tapering one end. And then I'm just going to roll it up. And I could stop here and make a little bit of a bud, or I can keep going a little bit bigger. And when I get to the shape or size that I want, I'll just tear off that edge, actually stretch it a little bit so it tapers, and place it on the leaf. And in this particular project, I'm going to make 3 of these roses, but you could make as many roses as you like. I have 3 children, so I'm making 1 rose for each of my children. This is a nice family necklace. It would be a great gift for a grandma if you wanted to make a rose for each one of the grandchildren. You could go as big or as small with these roses and put as many as you like on the leaf base. So I'm just going to finish up the 3rd rose. And get that positioned on the base. And you can see I just sort of taper each of those ends and place the rose on. And I overlap them just a little bit and make sure that they're pretty well down, but I'm not pressing too hard to erase the texture. Once I get that done, just do a little bit extra refining. And I'm going to go ahead and get that in the oven for 30 minutes, and I do cover it so I can prevent the scorching or burning. Now it's out of the oven, and you can see this is the back side. I'm going to use another sheet of clay that's rolled out to the number 2, 3 setting on my pasta machine, and some coarse sandpaper to texture it. I'm using a little bit of the Genesis medium since this is going to be raw to bake clay. If you have liquid clay, just use that. And I'm going to take a snake of the green, and I'm going to fill in where the leaves overlap, just so I don't have a hard edge. I can kind of smooth that out just a little bit so it's not quite so sharp a difference between the two levels of the leaves, and it makes for a little bit smoother transition and will prevent me from getting air bubbles in there. So I'll just kind of use that clay to press it in and take off any of the excess clay that I have there, smooth that out a little bit. And once I get it all cleaned up, I'm going to go ahead and take that sheet of clay, and again, it's rolled out to the number 3 setting on my pasta machine, and press that down. And then I'll take my craft blade and I'll start to cut off that excess. I started just by holding it in my hand and running the craft blade over it, but really that was a little bit awkward, so I am going to go ahead and put it down on my table. The thing about this is I'm angling the craft blade so it's slightly underneath the leaves, and that way when I texture the back, I won't have too much excess clay. So I'll go ahead and cut around each of those leaves and trim off any excess that I have. And I'm going to make sure that it's well adhered, and I'll press it down, and I will, I got a little bit of smudge on there, so I'm just taking that off. But I'm just using my fingers to refine the seam so it's not such an obvious seam. I'm going to go over it with the texture, but I like to make sure that it's well adhered before I start to do the texturing. Okay, and that's looking pretty good. Just take off any extra clay, use my fingers to refine the edges. And then I'm going to take my coarse sandpaper and just start to press that. Now I'm pressing towards the center of the leaf so that I don't have extra clay coming off the edges. And I'll just use that sandpaper and go all the way around it a couple of times, and then make sure that I'm actually texturing the whole back of the piece. The sandpaper, the coarse ground sandpaper, makes a really nice texture. I tend to get a little bit of the sandpaper stuck in the clay, but because I'm actually going to antique this towards the end, I'm not too worried about that. But I like the way the sandpaper looks. And we'll just go ahead and clean that up. I have to use a needle tool to get the clay out of some of the veins. But the piece is looking pretty good. And just use that sandpaper to clean up any edges. Once that's cleaned up, I'll go ahead and put this on a cardstock and cover it and get that into the oven. And I'll bake this for about 30 minutes. So this is the second 30-minute curing. Once that's cured and out of the oven, I'm going to use my handheld Dremel. You could also use a non-electric drill. And I'm just going to go ahead and put the hole in each one of those outside leaves, and this is how I will attach it to the necklace chain. Get those drilled. And then I'm going to take some brown craft, it's actually burnt umber, acrylic paint, and I'm going to thin it down just a little bit and start on the back and just till that's really well covered with the burnt umber paint. And I'm just giving it a little bit of a highlight to texture to highlight all of the texture. You can see I'm going over the entire piece. Then I'll take a damp paper towel and rub off a good portion of that paint so it's really just highlighting the piece. And I also take that off the back. And I will cure that for 10 minutes at the manufacturer's instructions. And now I've got the piece out of the oven and it's time to assemble it. So I've got 2 jump rings and they're going to go in each one of those outside leaves. So I'm going to attach the chain first. This is an 8-inch chain. And just put that jump ring on and attach the chain. And then I'll get both of those chains on and finish this up. Now this is going to end up being about an 18-inch necklace, probably a little bit larger than that, but of course you can vary the length of the chain to get whatever length you want. You could also change the orientation and put the attach the chain to a jump ring in the middle leaf. Now I'm just attaching the toggle clasp. Now this chain happens to have links that open. If you don't have a link that open, you'll have to use a jump ring. And I'll go ahead and attach the first piece of the toggle and move on to the other side. And attach the second toggle. This one gave me fits. And once those pieces are attached, you are finished with your necklace. And the toggle works well. And you have a nice finished piece. That's how the piece looks in the end. I hope you've enjoyed this project. I think it's a sweet necklace. And again, you can make it for a mother, for a grandmother. Each of the roses can represent a child, can represent a spouse. I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this project. I enjoyed making it with you. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for joining me in my studio. Take care, everyone.